So welcome everyone to this library science talk. It's the fourth one this year. These talks are organized in collaboration with ALIS, the Association of International Librarians and Information Specialists in Geneva, and the Central Bibliothèque Zurich. Today we are blessed to welcome Ignasi Labastida, who will talk about the role of our research library supporting research data management. Let me just briefly introduce him. Ignasi holds a PhD in physics. He is currently Director's Delegate for Scientific Publications and Open Science at the University of Barcelona and Chair of the Info Policy Group at the League of European Research Universities. He is also a member of the Open Science Committee at the Spanish National Rectors Conference. For more than 15 years, he has been heading research support at the Library of the University of Barcelona, where he has played a key role in developing both open access and research data institutional policies and in establishing the services to implement them. Alongside his experience in open science practices, he is also an expert on open licensing, having served as the first public leader of Creative Commons in Spain. On a personal note, today's talk is particularly meaningful for me. Thanks to Ignasi, many years ago, I was able to use the application Boss Viewer to create, to generate maps of interactions between research groups at the Institute of Neuroscience at the University of Barcelona. And at that time, that exercise was a key part of to be able to write my bachelor thesis. And later on, you were also the supervisor of my internship and the master that I'm currently studying of library management. So this is very special to me. To meet here in this totally different context and many years ago now in Geneva. So thank you once more, Ignasi, for accepting this invitation to participate in this talk. The floor is now yours. We will open the floor for questions after his presentation. So if you have anything, please write it down, and then we will open the micro to all of you. Also for those attending online. So thank you so much.
So thank you very much, Sarah, for this kind introduction. As you say, for me, it's very special to be here today with this fantastic audience for many reasons. Of course, the personal reasons that Sarah just mentioned it. Also because I'm a physicist, so it's the first time in CERN. So it's like, wow, I'm now talking in the library of CERN. So I took many pictures before starting. And of course, with this fantastic audience, some faces that are familiar that were with us these days of the Open Science Fair. And of course, when Sarah and all the team of the library invite me to give this talk, so I couldn't refuse, I said yes. And as you will say, what I'm going to share with you is a bit our story on how we have built our services in our library for research data management. Of course, probably some of you have already established some similar service. We can discuss later on which are the different barriers, challenges, and obstacles that you found. And well, this is just an experience that I like to share with you, and also to, at the end, gave some recommendations, some conclusions that if you are starting into this debate, you want to think about how you can improve your services, etc., I hope it will help you. So let's start from the beginning. So why supporting data management? Why we start to thinking, okay, from the library, as Sarah said, I'm a physicist, but I've been working in the library since 2006. And especially leading the research unit. We were at one point saying, well, maybe this is something that we have to take into account, and we have to start thinking on why we should do these services. I always like the old text. I always defend that we can look at the old text and see what they were saying. And I like always to, when we discuss about open science, to bring this call for action. Yesterday, some of the speakers or some of the questions, people were saying, look, maybe we talk too much and we should do things. So at that time, almost 10 years ago, 9.5, when the Netherlands were leading the European Council, they made this meeting in Amsterdam, and they made this call for action. And I always like to bring this because I think it's very important. There are two things here that for me are key and that it changed the way we thought how to do our work with data in the library. At that time, they were saying, and I think it's still on, that we had two goals. Well, at that time, a year was fantastic. We were looking at 1 year, 2020. 2020 was when everything has to happen, and we know what happened at the end. But for that, in 2016, they were saying, okay, 2020 should be when we will have full open access for scientific publications. Well, we know that you are not yet there. But the second one is what the one I want to take today is we didn't say we should have full open access for data because it's not possible and we have to face it. I mean, there is a lot of data that should be closed. And I always say that I hope one day I will be the rector's delegate for closed science and not for open science because there will be no need to put open because science will be open by default and there will be no discussions. So at that time, they were saying we need to change the way we reuse data. And I think that was key because it was like, okay, the problem is that probably we share some data, but we need to share it in a different way if the goal is to reuse the data. Not just to publish data by publishing, but to do this. So that's why we started to think that, well, we should do something from the library point of view. Of course, we had a bit this question that, well, our initial role was, yeah, sharing research data. That's what we were doing with the papers, with the conferences, etc. And especially because the researchers were coming to us asking for these requirements from the journals. More and more, the journals were asking the researchers, please share your data. Some of them were more strict. So, for instance, PLOS says that there is a requirement. Some others were recommending. Some of them, they were saying, well, if you don't share data, we are not going to start the review process. So we knew that the researchers start to have these requirements. And that was the beginning. I mean, nobody, at least in our case, came and said, I want to share data because I want to share data. They came because they had this request. If you want to publish here, you need to publish the data. And that is how we started. This is one of the first papers that was asked to publish data. And these researchers from the pharmaceutical school came to us and said, we need to share our data in a public repository. At that time, we had experience, probably was around 5-6 years of our institutional repository, mainly built for publications. It was and it is this space. But, well, we start to look and to see, yes, we can do it. And as you can see, this is the same notice that is still there, so it hasn't changed. We still have the handle and the statement of data availability saying that the data is available in the repository. Well, yesterday, preparing the slides, I was looking at this register in the repository. I confess, I had to change something because it's very old. It wasn't really updated. And it looks something like that. Okay, here there is a mix of English, Catalan, everything. There is a note saying that the primary data related to this article published in PeerG is also accessible in the repository. So this is an open access article, but this is also the repository. And yes, well, we thought that was at that point enough because that was the requirement that the researchers had at this time. They wanted a handle with the data, with some metadata. If I extended the metadata, you will see that there are two different metadata in this collection for research data. One is the location, that was data from Barcelona, so nothing really interesting here. It's a lab, so it's not. And especially another important metadata the period of time when this data was created. Well, researchers were happy. We were quite happy. We started to play with the data, but what I was not happy was about that. Yes, a lot of data, but nobody understands this data. Well, probably they understand. Well, after 10 years, I don't know if they still understand the data. We're still receiving these kind of files. We're still receiving these tables nowadays. But after these 10 years, we don't accept just these files. And I will tell you that we are not publishing this data anymore in the institutional repository. We have another thing. So during these 10 years, what our goal has been not to just publish these files, and that's it. We want this idea of the optimal reuse. So we think, and that's one of the tasks that we do in our unit, is that we need to share data in a different way. So now when we share data, we ask the researchers, you should explain what anti-lock BI, what it means, DIL, anything, where are the units, etc. So we are now in our services curating this information. And I think this is something that if we want to engage with the researchers on this support on research data management, even I don't know anything about pharmaceutical, I don't know anything about all this, I can ask the researchers, please provide more information. Because maybe I will go to Xavier, to Sofia, to all them, and ask them, probably they will even have some doubts on, sure, this is, oh, probably yes, probably not, oh, I don't know, because it has happened, and not after 10 years. And I confess, as a physicist, I did the same mistake for sure. So when we were looking at the full data life cycle, we were seeing that we were only focusing on that one. And I remember also having some training, some conferences with librarians. We're saying it doesn't make sense to just focus on giving access to data. We need to work in all the process, because if not, at the end, we only have some data that, yeah, for a check, I publish data, check, but this is data that in many cases is not useful for others. So when we're looking at all the data life cycle, we were thinking we need to do something else. But of course, we, let's call it this way, are librarians, and we can do what we can do. No, we cannot expect to take full support in all the life cycle. So we have to decide what to do. So that time we said, okay, we need to change our approach. And I will still start from the end, but I will go to all the life cycle, as you will see in a moment. So of course, changing this approach, we thought, well, it's still our task to continue helping researchers on publishing and sharing data. But, for instance, we start to discuss where. We start to say, should we still say, go to our institutional repository? Or we advise them to go somewhere else? And our advice nowadays is, go somewhere else. So we always say, you should publish your data in your community. So if your community has already a solid repository, go there. I always tell the researchers, if you go to some place to look for data from your colleagues, this is the place where you should place your data. And of course, we can help you on the information, on the metadata, to reach what we call now the FAIR principles, to make this data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. But of course, we have found many disciplines, many communities where this subject-based repository doesn't exist. So we think it's a good idea to have our institutional repository as a second option. This is a good option because also we control how all the process of publication, so we can help them also on checking all the fair principles. But of course, there are other options. And being in CERN, of course, the first option could be Zenodo. I don't care. I mean, if a researcher comes to me and said, I prefer Zenodo than the institutional repository, I'm also fine. Especially many projects that are in collaboration, they prefer to go to Zenodo because they feel it as a neutral zone. So it's not my home, it's not your home, let's put it everything in Zenodo. Fantastic. What I ask them is, if you want, we can help you on publishing in Zenodo. Not because it's complicated, but we can help you on writing the README file, on checking if you have all the information, ORCID, ROR, whatever. Okay, and of course, some of them, it's not our advice, but it exists, so I have to put it here, use even commercial solutions for any reason. Well, it's their choice. They have academic freedom, whatever we call it. But on the second option, and with that also we built many years ago, and we still update that information. So we want to provide information to our researchers. If you choose other things, here you get information about what are the options. There might be restrictions on the number of files, on the size of the files, etc. So we said, okay, if you don't want to come to our solution or go to your solution of the community, here you get information. But the second thing I wanted to share with you is that also we were discussing, should we have a new institutional repository for data? Our repository was ready somehow to host research data. I was not so happy because this space is not really made for data. So, well, it was like a compromise, like we can do it. So we're thinking there are other universities. I remember at that time the University of Edinburgh having a specific repository for data, but also based on this space. And at that time, we were discussing with other colleagues in other universities in Catalonia, like, should we have data in our repository or look for a single repository? And that's our choice. The choice we did is to work together, all the universities, all the libraries at the universities, and especially we have a consortia, and to ask the consortia to establish what we call the Catalan repository for research data, and moreover, invite all the research centers. We have research centers that are not 100% in the universities, they are a mixture, to invite them into this repository. So now we have more than 40 institutions together in one repository, and my recommendation is to build that, because we only have to take care of one installation. But the most important is that we have built a community of data curators. So here we meet probably once in a month, maybe once every 6 weeks, and we gather together virtually, and we discuss a lot of topics on data curation. We have established common procedures, we have established common metadata, we are establishing common improvements, and this is probably the most successful outcome of the collaboration of the consortia. Discussing with many people, everyone says, this is a very good example of collaboration. So I keep saying to colleagues in other parts of Spain, in small countries, do that, because I think it's really cost efficient. It's much better than having another repository in another institution that also is hard to be visible. So this is where now we curate our data. The researchers can just go through without any other obstacle than identify themselves in the institute with the institutional credentials, but they cannot publish automatically. They settle the information, and we from the institutions curate that information. We ask for, please provide more information. We want to know what's this data, what's this file, etc., etc. And of course, Sarah also mentioned, we have a long history dealing with copyright, dealing with open licensings, we can also use our expertise on licensing and discuss which is the best license for your data, which are the licenses suitable for data, which ones are less, which are the difference with the CC0, the Creative Commons standard license, specific license like Open Data Commons, etc. So this is also some support that we can provide from the library because we have this expertise. But of course, we cannot stop here because we are seeing that the data has this data life cycle. So we were looking at the old cycle and we were thinking where we can also give some support. Of course, now everyone, all the researchers are more or less requested to make a data management plan. They have to have support working with the data when they store the data, generate data, etc. And at the end, we need to preserve the data and share the data. Of course, I already talked in the last part, but let's see which is our role in the other parts. We start from the beginning, and we thought, yes, we can also think about helping researchers on planification, on doing data management plans. And this is something that really bothers me because I don't want a data management plan as another bureaucratic burden. I always say when a researcher comes to the library and say, please help us in a data management plan, I say, forget about templates, forget about checks. Tell me what you do. And then we will see how we're going to make your data management plan. I always repeat that the data management plan has to be dynamic, and what is more important, has to be useful for the researchers. I don't care what you do with your data. You should care. So what we're trying to help in making data management plan is to help them to make the right questions and to ask them things that sometimes they even have asked themselves. Because we said that the data management plan is aimed at facilitating research, foreseeing possible problems, and analyzing future situations. So I play sometimes the devil's advocate, asking a lot of questions that maybe they haven't even thought about. And especially when there are collaborations, sometimes questions like, what will happen with the data after the collaboration? Where the data will be placed? Who will be accessing the data, etc. There are questions that, well, they don't have answers at the beginning, and they are really grateful that you make those questions to them because they can find good solutions. So we tell them, this is what you should have in the data management plan. I don't care which is the structure, but please fill all this information and please be coherent, because I've reviewed a lot of data management plans where there is no coherence. So at the first part, they say, we're going to open everything will be open. And at the end, they say, we are not going to share anything, only we will share under request. And please, where is the coherence here? But of course, we also have to fulfill requirements from the commission, from the government, from wherever. So even we try to do this more informal relationship with the researchers on supporting on the data management plan, at the end, we help them on filling the bureaucratic templates and to fill in each part what is required. And for that, again, with the consortia, we adapted the data management plan online, a tool that was developed in the Digital Curation Center in Edinburgh, and we did our EINA, that is the word for tool in Catalan, EINA DMP, and any researcher of, even it's open to anyone, so if you can try, you can try also, but any researcher of our institutions can go there and develop, with the templates, the data management plan. What is good? I always say, well, I don't care if you don't use it, because what I care is that you think about your data management plan. But here they find also examples, they find guidance. So we have worked not just to have a tool, but also to provide information. And this is, again, something that has been done together with all the libraries of the Catalan environment. But doing all the data management plan, we also have created internal alliances. Some of them that, well, we didn't expect to create this alliance, and I will show you in a minute, because we have started to make a lot of questions internally. One of the questions that always appear is personal data. I must say that a lot of our data is from social science in our repository, because probably life science, experimental science have another solutions. And we have a lot of data from history, from the faculty of law, from the faculty of economics, etc. So it appears, this question of the personal data. Of course, we are not a specialist in personal data, but we have our protection officer, of that data protection officer, and we discuss with them. And we discuss a lot with them, and we also discuss about how we can translate a project that I always liked, this data tax from Harvard. It's a project to identify which data can be open and which data must be closed and how must be closed. So we finally said we must do the same in our environment. This is a very interesting project, but it's based on the US law. So yes, it could be inspiring, but it doesn't fit in Europe, or it doesn't fit in our law, the country. So with working together with the data protection officer, we ended by translating that into our environment. And this is a tool that for me is very important, because here, this information, we also make a workflow for raising awareness among researchers on the importance of closing data. Because sometimes they got this pressure of opening, but we also have to raise awareness and to teach and to explain when they have to close the data and how they need to close the data and where data must be secure. So doing data management plans, discussing with researchers, at the end, we ended with this, with the data protection officer working together with the library. We also have a preprint in archive explaining how this can be done in the European context. But of course, not everything is a success. We also failed. I could ask you with whom we failed. And probably when I tell you now with whom we failed, you will tell me, it's the most complicated relationship we have in our institution. Yes, the IT people. We fail with them. We fail with them because our goal, and I know I'm not giving up, so I still want to do that. So I hope in 2026 I will have something like that. Our goal is to have a solution or information about what are the solutions for storing data for our researchers. Because, okay, we can plan, we know where to publish, but meanwhile, when they do research, they need facilities. And in many cases, they don't know which are these facilities. We have facilities, but we don't provide information. This is a very good example from the University of Utrecht. This is the research data management together with the library and other units, as we'll see in a moment, where they have identified all the possible solutions that researchers have in their institutions. And also there are 8 questions that help researchers on deciding which is the best solution. So if you say, I need to encrypt my data, then many of them will disappear. If you don't have the requirement and data must be open, etc., then other options appear. So our goal, and I hope, as I said, I will not give up, my goal is to have this information for the researchers. In the library, we cannot build all these systems, but we can provide the information. And especially when we help the researchers on doing the data management plan, this is very useful. They complain a lot, the researchers, because they have to budget the project. And some of these solutions cost money. And for them, it's fine. I mean, they know that the funder will put money in the budget for that. But the problem is that they don't know how much money they have to budget. Here, if you click to one of them, you will see it's free, maybe it's free till 1 terabyte, and then you have to pay, or other solutions that are external solutions have to be paid. So this is what I think it's also interesting to have in each institution, to look at our institution, which are the solutions that are internal, which are the solutions that you can externalize, etc., but to provide information to have this support, full support on research data management for the researchers. And of course, we cannot work alone. We cannot do everything. We know that if someone comes here and asks for things, we try to give a solution. We probably are the unit in the universities, in the research center, that are more open to help and to provide an answer. And I like this image from, I think it's from Delft, from one Dutch institution, where yes, the library is one part of all the data management, but we need all the units together. If we don't put all the gears working together, we won't have a good data management in our institutions. Here in the Netherlands, they always talk about these data stewards. Well, this is something that from the library we can coordinate, but probably we need new role, we need new trainings, and we need new profiles. If you have a lot of money, let's say like the Dutch, you can have a data steward in each faculty. You can have data steward in each research group. Well, I have to confess, we don't have as much money, but we have a data steward. Since 3 years ago, we have included in our team someone that doesn't come from the library. It was a new person that entered into our team, especially for research management, data research management. And he is mainly the one who is doing this work of data steward, together with the librarians in the different libraries, talking with the ICT, talking with researchers, talking with the DPO, etc., etc. Okay? For a period of time, we lost him because of these bureaucratic things again, and it was really a nightmare for us because we rely on him, we rely on his task, and we convince the university of the importance of not stopping this service now that the researchers are already understanding that this is a good thing for them. That this is not just, I have to make my data management plan because someone is requiring me. They are beginning to understand that this is something helpful for them. And of course, everything could be in place, but there is still a lot of excuses. This is something that we still have to face and to discuss with the researchers. Yes, your data is interesting. No problem. The data can be placed here. No problem. We will figure out who owns your data, usually the university, etc., etc. So this is something that we have discussed these days about the cultural shift. This is something important also in data. My data, my data, my data. I don't want to share my data. So, going to the end, what are we doing now in our library after all these experiences? So what we do nowadays is to support in developing the data management plans, especially for PhD students. This is mandatory since 2019, but it has really implemented just a couple of years ago, that all PhD students must fill a data management plan, a very simple one. We have made this data management plan template, let's call it this way, with these only 3 questions. We don't want to make a complex thing. We only want that the PhD students think about how they're going to manage their data. Many of them also have to pass ethical committees. So we are now together working with the ethical committees to put everything together. And it makes a lot of sense, and it's easier to understand where they're going to put the data if especially they have personal data, and things like that. We support, of course, on copyright issues because of our expertise. We train and inform researchers. We do a lot of training on PhD students. The PhD students have like a program, a training program, and with the library, we are embedded in different things, of course, for open access publications, etc., but also on the research data management. We support, as I said, on publishing data. We manage that collection of the Catalan repository. And the last thing we are doing now is to include the information about the research data sets in our CRIS system. Because as I said, I don't care what is the data. I mean, if you have chosen to go to the CERN to put your data, or to go to the GenBank, or to go to GBIF, etc., it's fine, because probably it's the where your data should be. But the data, we need to know where are. So we need a kind of catalog of the data of our university. So that's why, in the same way that we ask, where have you published your papers, we are putting in the CRIS system, where is our data? Because probably it's not their data, it's our data. And as I said, we were doing that in our team, but especially with this single data steward. But we are also doing something that is planning a professional career in the library. So we have built a program for professionalization and to have profiles within the library of research supporters. We have already people doing support in our 16 libraries, but we think that we need also to do it more formally and to have different paths. And we know that there is people willing to have to be trained to learn more on being this research supporter. And of course, one of these professional career will be dealing with research data. So to finish, just conclusions. So what we learned during these 10 years is that the library cannot do everything. Design the service that you can provide with the people you have, and maybe during the years you can improve all these services. Create as many internal alliances to work together, because this should be a purpose that has to be fulfilled with all the units that are related with the data management. Train your staff, bring new profiles, of course, if possible, as many as you can. Provide several solutions about sharing data, and whatever solution, try to curate the data and the metadata, of course, to fulfill the FAIR principles, etc. Know where research share data, what are the obstacles, what the problems they have sharing data in one place or the other, but also gather all this information, and of course, raise awareness among researchers and provide them with training, and train yourself. Thank you very much, and now open for questions or comments.
Thank you so much, Ignasi. It has been like really, really interesting to see all this evolution that you have done at the university. It's very interesting also the alliances that you have done with several institutions in this case in Catalonia, to build this data management plan and tool, and also the repository for the research data. So thank you so much. And now we open the floor if someone has questions here in person, or if we have something online also.
There's one question online. We don't see the data tags in the repository. Did you use them on it?
We're not using. Yes. Yes. No. It's regarding this question. This is the project of the data tags, where the idea is to identify the different way the data can be open, closed, and which are the security of the data, etc. This is what we have made in the Catalan, translating the American project into the Catalan environment. This is not yet embedded in the repository. This is a proposal. It was also, I haven't mentioned that, but there was an initiative in our university with our data protection officer, but it has been shared with also the community of data protection officers of the universities, and it has been agreed, but it has not yet implemented into the into the repository. What we are waiting is that the repository is secure enough to host sensitive data. So that's what is more complicated, because this is not really complicated. At the end is to take the law, take the regulations, but what we have is the workflow. So the questions that is online, where the researcher can self-assess which are the different security aspects that he has to take or she has to take into account when dealing with personal data. So we are working on that, and probably soon we'll have that embedded in the repository. Sure.
Change sharing research data with researchers. Did they take what? Did they change right away? Or did you have to advocate about
Researchers. Well, probably what most of our contact with the researcher is when they need to publish a paper and they need to publish the data. So these are the ones that come the most. We have also seen we are advocating, especially in the PhDs, when we do the trainings, and sometimes also we are asked. In many cases, now there are more and more people asking in the faculties. So it's not because they are seeing especially supervisors are seeing that the PhD are doing things that they are not really familiar with. So my last experiences doing some sessions is that the faculties are really now concerned about all these issues. And I think our advertisement has been through the PhD students. But also, and I have to confess also too, it's because of the funders. And I explain you why. For many years, the Spanish funder stayed in the call for projects that people should have to have a data management plan. As usual, nobody cared. As usual, the funder didn't care either. So when you are asking, have you done your data management plan? Oh, nobody's asking me, nobody's requiring. So, well, it's something that we'll see. This year is the first year that at the end of the project, the funder has said, where is your data management plan? For me, this is a complete failure because you cannot make your data management plan at the end of the project. It's again a proof of a data management plan is useless because it's a check. However, this has helped us to show the researchers, look, at the end, you will need the data management plan. So please, let's do it at the beginning. Even you are not asked, even you are not monitored, because we see that now there will be this demand as a justification of the project. So this is how we are not really have this need to do a lot of advertising, because from this year, with this announcement, with this requirement, everybody was really scared, and they've been coming to the library and ask for support, but especially ask on information, and to organize sessions like the one today, but with full of researchers. I was really shocked. In the School of Economics, 300 people. In the chemistry school, over 100. The auditorium full. That is really a change for us, because when we organize things, we don't have as many researchers. But now they have this threat, let's call it this way.
I have a question. It's regarding the consortium that you did to create a repository of to save the data. We clearly see the benefits now, but I'm wondering which were the challenges at the beginning.
The challenge, first of all, is a cultural challenge. I mean, I want my own tool, I want my own solution. How we can control that, and who is going to take decisions on the future, how long it will take, because sometimes these decisions are slowly taken, how much it will cost. And until now, we see a lot of benefits, because what we see is, first of all, we have to also to decide which is the best solution. And of course, there were many solutions in the market. And at the end, we chose Dataverse, open source. And we also have seen in these years that we have also engaged in the community of Dataverse. So what we have seen is that we can work together. We are independently working in our collection. So every university has established a different way initially of how to enter the data sets, if it's open to everyone. I think now all of us are just opening, and any researcher can go and choose which is their own affiliation. So, but yes, at the beginning, well, I think probably the most challenging was that could we have one thing and work together with all the different cultural ways of doing things, and especially to bring the researcher centers that are a bit different than the universities. Some of them, they don't have a full library, so there's also some challenges, but I think we help each other in different ways. So I must say that I see a lot of benefits there.
Do you have experience with research data in the humanities? Like I am not a steward and photography, and they keep telling me that they don't have any data.
I, I got the same discussion with the dean of the law school, that he invited me once and said, we don't have data. And we started to discuss, and suddenly we saw a lot of data. So at the end, I think we need to talk with the researchers and to discuss that, well, data can be in many different ways. We also have music in our repository as data, because we have our researchers doing research in old music. So we put MP3s, we put the music score there. So we need to engage with the researchers, talk with them, and figure out which is their data, which is the shape of the data. And I think all the disciplines somehow they have a data, because at the end, data should be seen as a primary part of the research. So I always say that in our repository probably is more humanities than experimental research data. We have a lot of people from archaeology doing a lot of data there. We are now engaging a lot of people of social science, especially in the field of political science, because they are gathering a lot of data nowadays also. So it's, I don't know, in philosophy, we need to discuss with them, but probably the people from logic, or probably if they do some reviews, so probably, but it's not, I always say it's not like we need to force them. It's like to try to talk with them, to establish a relationship, and well, we'll see if one day they will come to you and say, we need this. And I also, especially in humanities and social science, we had some discussions when they are preparing the call for a project, because even there is not need to have a full data management plan. They have to at least draft a little bit if they're gonna develop some data. So with these initial conversations, we find out that they have some data in different ways. And another challenging thing is the qualitative data. And it's hard because there is a lot of work of anonymization, pseudonymization, because there are people, not only the people you got, for instance, an interview, but also the people appears in the text of the interview. So that's also a challenge. Then different projects that are working with this topic. And yeah, we are trying to convince also some social scientists to share this qualitative data that is different than an Excel file or tower data, etc. Norm.
if we don't have a central repository, that's my case, we can use the institutional repository. And you also talk about a Chris platform.
Yes.
And I think, or I doubt the first question was if we can see an example or what are the labels or metadata that you usually use. The title, I don't know.
Well, mainly we use the title, the authors. What we are discussing a lot with the researchers is that title and authors can be different than title and authors of the paper. This is something also challenging because we ask for a title that defines the data and not the paper. It's different things. We also put an abstract. Again, if you look at our initial data sets, some abstracts look the same that the paper, and we are now saying, no, you need to explain what is the data. Of course, in our repository, all the authors have ORCID, have institutional affiliations. We try to put ROR now, this identifier for institutions. We try to link with projects. We try to link with other outputs, especially papers. So if this data set is related with a paper or even with other data sets, we make these relationships. We put the information about where this data was gathered. I mean, if it's in a lab, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Well, it's information, but of course, if it's observational or if you, for instance, these people of archaeology, they go to different fields, so this information is important. Or some people from biology, where they have a species, etc., this information is important. And the period of time, during which period of time this data has been analyzed. And also, if you have, for instance, in the business school, a lot of the data comes from public data. We do not reproduce the public data. We can reproduce the data they built by adding. So we also put information about the sources where this data came from. We also put information about software. If this data requires some software, sometimes the data set has different files, and we have file with the data, but also with some scripts that you can use to make this data. Type of data, some metadata, subject information. We use our own thesaurus, so there is information there. Some free keywords also for the researchers, that they always want some free keywords. And so more or less, this is the metadata. I mean, the scheme of metadata is quite complete. It's not required to fill everything, but we try to fill more than what is required. You're welcome.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Tuble.
My question is on the difference between data and research data, but I told you at the onset, I'm a silly person, a jurist, so if you don't want to be a silly person, with you. Okay. My question is inspired by one of the first
Slides?
yes, slides on the relation between sex and color or age. I don't try to remember on the lipid content of
This
tissue
one?
in rats. It was at the very start, there was something about research on the tissue of rats.
Yeah, tissue of rats or something.
Yeah.
This is the paper.
Yeah, okay. If someone, you know that a lot of health institutions, starting with World Health Organization, is very keen on social determinants of health and person. So if someone makes a research on the relation between wearing, let's say, brown trousers and mental dementia, it will be considered research. But if the census decide to enter all data on housing, jobs, etc., plus the medical record, which will allow to see thousands of interesting correlations, it will not be considered research. It will be called bureaucratic decision infringing upon privacy. So where does the risk? Because in your world, research is added value. Oh, researcher. But more skeptical people say that researchers are people who find alibi to conceal the absolute lack of purpose of their research behind the screen of this. So how do you react to my question that maybe data without research is better than research with too many?
So I'm going to tell you that I've been working a lot in the past with the Catalan government in relation with about your question about the importance of releasing administrative data. So probably we put here the different tags. Research data, we say that is the data that has some engagement, direct engagement with some research, where this information, what we call the government or administrative information, is released for many reasons. And of course, it's a very important source of information to perform research. So when we before starting with all that, we were discussing with the Catalan government about the data portal. I mean, probably all the governments nowadays, they have open data portals. They have also villages, autonomies, different.
Yeah, but in most cases, they have not entered initially the information. For instance, they have not entered my different housing condition, my job, etc. So it's too late to make the correlation.
Well, and this is what we were discussing. I'm not working with them anymore because for different reasons. But at the beginning, we were discussing about the importance of which is the most important data. In the past government we had in Catalonia, there was a specific Secretary General for that. And one of the questions that came to the researchers is, which data do you think are more valuable to make research for you? But what was more important was in which format and how to describe the data. Because again, we can have a lot of administrative data that appears like that without really good information. So one case, the department that is more closed in our government is not the health, is the education. And the reason is because they don't want to make rankings of schools. So they are not sharing information about the performance of the students, etc. But we know they have that information. So what we were discussing together with researchers in education is that we need something like that. Like that. Oh, sorry. No. Something, well, I lost the slides. Something like that. So information on which data do you keep secure, but in which formats? Because then I can make myself the research questions. And I know that if I knock at the department, they will allow me to go to the data in very secure conditions, with confidentiality, signatures, etc. But unless I know how the data is gathered, how the data is organized, I cannot make my questions, and as you say, correlate the information. So it's very important to have this information. So I always say that it's important to have, as much as possible, all the metadata open, even if the data must be closed. And in many cases, data must be closed and must be secure. So it's very important that these data portals are open for researchers, for doing research, because, as you said, correlating this information with other information, you can make some outputs, some outcomes, etc., etc.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
The second and last question: you were a physicist, a researcher.
Yes.
You know, you work in the library.
Yes.
How much did this change your view on the world of research?
Wow. I don't think it has changed a lot, because it's like I'm not in the library like in a silo without following what's going on in the research. Of course, things are different. The research I was doing at that time is much different. I mean, I didn't got the pressure, for instance, of publishing. I didn't got the pressure of open access. Even now, I have everything, all my old papers. I even took my LaTeX files and make new PDFs to put it in the repository. So this is something that I think this pressure on researchers has changed a lot. And I must confess something that I think also what helped us in talking with the researchers is that if you have done research, sometimes they talk to you in a different way. It's like, well, they talk a little bit my language. So it also has helped sometimes to establish this relationship. So it's important to have this connection, no, but also to break this, because sometimes the researchers, well, they say, well, you are a librarian, maybe you don't know about that, etc. So we need to change this position. It's a position that sometimes appears like the researcher and the staff of the university, that they feel that they are something else. And well, it is, at the end, we are all people. And I think we try to do things for something good. And at the end, we have to work together and to establish this relationship. It's not that I'm not going to say to a researcher how to do the research. I only want to help and not to put more burdens into the research, to facilitate. I always say that when we started with our institutional repository, my first and only obsession was I only want a click. A click. I don't want them to feel more and more and more information. So if you at the end convince the researchers that what we do is to facilitate and not to complicate, and they see at the end that, oh, it's true, you are facilitating my work, that's the success they always.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ignasi. Thank you so much also to everyone that attended today here, and also thank you for everyone joining online. It was a pleasure to listen to you.
Likewise.
If you want to review the presentation, the talk, it will be updated at some point during this month in the A-List YouTube channel.
Fantastic.
And
thank you very much. It has been a pleasure, and thank you for all the people that attended here and virtually. Thank you a lot.